I think that just as we're living in a nuclear age, we have grown so tremendously in scientific knowledge. It doesn't seem too much to say that men can begin to awaken to the fact that they haven't grown enough spiritually and haven't recognized their spiritual capacities.
Once something like eating is death, then you've struck at the very heart of life. The enemy of the older radical theories may have been the ruling class, but today the stakes of whether we will reform ourselves into a new kind of human being, a new kind of society, whether we will find selves worth being, the stakes of it are simply life itself.
And so one of the things that I do that that people might not understand or they might feel a little bit uncomfortable with is I do critique what I call the liberal charity model a bit. And that's what most of us engage in. I certainly do. So I'm not saying that, and I'm not even saying that people shouldn't do it. If we stopped doing it, a lot more people would suffer even more than they do. Liberal charity is basically giving money. Giving money for goods and services, oftentimes that other people provide, whether it's, your church as an institution provides the services, or, you give money to an organization that supplies food or shelter or psychiatric services or anything like that, right? And you as a giver are writing a check or giving cash. Like another example would be the Salvation Army ringer. You're plunking the $10 in the bucket or whatever. And then they go do that. And you as the giver may not have any sort of direct contact with the receiver, even know who is receiving it at all. And actually, we're sort of trained to believe that that's superior because we then say to ourselves, well, then the other person on the other side doesn't have to be shamed by the fact that they're receiving and we're giving. But the impersonality of it is a thing that is a double-edged sword, because you as the giver don't have any or very little direct knowledge of the problems that other people are facing where they do need your help. There are therefore problems with this liberal charity model that I point out. In addition to it being impersonal, it often benefits large goods and services suppliers. We don't think about this very much, clearly. Like that's something that the Morin Academy dwells on, is that we don't think about this very much. But whenever we do either commerce or charity with big chain, we are not supporting our local businesses, farmers, and suppliers, thus reducing local employment, thus partly contributing to poverty, which thus makes it necessary for people to need harvesters, so to speak. So it's a double-edged sword, right? It's good, you're getting people food. However, there are these kind of unseen ramifications. And one of them is that local providers are yet again at a disadvantage. And it also, this charity model builds either no community or very weak community on the giver and receiver sides, because it's very individualistic and they don't meet. And maybe the giver doesn't even meet any other givers, and the receivers just go into a store and get stuff and leave. And so and of course, community, if it's functioning properly and it's strong, can actually save people from poverty, because people then could help each other more. So yeah, like there's ways in which there's some negatives about this. It maintains class divisions. In your mind, I am the middle class person or the upper middle class person that can afford to give. And so I'm going to. And the other person on the other end is, oh gosh, like I don't want to do this, but I'm going to walk into this free goods store or go to the harvester drop off and feel ashamed of myself, right? Because that's the way, that's the way we think about it here in the United States far too much, is in terms of honor and shame, and I'm this type of person and I am not this type of person. So it can sort of lead to either undeserved high self-esteem or undeserved low self-esteem in people. And it doesn't actually solve the causes of poverty, mental illness, and addictions that lead to poverty and homelessness. It sort of helps people survive the things that we tend to do with charity, but it doesn't fundamentally change their situation typically. I mean, every once in a while it does. The other option that I discuss is direct action, which goes along with personalism, which is a topic that we've covered in the Morin Academy quite a bit, which involves refusing to be impersonal, basically to see the other person as a unique person, a valuable human being, and not a number, not just as a role of any kind, but as a valuable person, which then, because of their dignity, requires that you recognize and help and deal with that individual person in all respect, with all respect and with love. Direct action also has its pluses and minuses, which I cover. It is sometimes very uncomfortable because you're interacting with people you don't know. You're interacting with people that may come from very different walks of life. It's very challenging sometimes to find common ground, but actually, if you do it after a while, it becomes less challenging. But at first, it can be quite daunting. And it's positive in that it's based on work and sharing, space, goods, and services, but that also can be uncomfortable if you share your home or a property that you have, or give your time, or your things. That's all costly, and it's costly in a way that just giving money isn't. Theoretically, a middle class or upper middle class person or a rich person can make more money pretty easily, but they can't get back their time, or some of their prized possessions as well, right? Or their peace of mind that they may lose by going and working, and being with people who are having a hard time. So I have had many experiences of conversing with people about this, and they say, I just don't think I could do that because it would depress me. And they're probably right. People are different, and some people would have a hard time handling it. So there's prices to be paid, but there's also the positive of experiencing sharing and working with others. Direct action builds local resilience. It has to, because if the more that people know each other, become comfortable with each other, help each other out, the stronger our social relations are. And social relations, the stronger they are, the more resilient, the more survivable ups and downs are among us. The direct action approach may or may not benefit large suppliers of goods and services, because sometimes direct action uses the same sort of surplus big box store goods that the larger charitable organizations do. It may or may not benefit local providers, so people have to kind of choose, and sometimes it's very difficult because the surplus food and items that the United States has are so plentiful that they're either free or extremely cheap, and local provisions never are, for a lot of reasons. But one is that a lot of corporations don't pay hardly any taxes, and they have a team of lawyers to kind of figure out how they're, tax angles, including donating all of these cheap goods to charitable organizations, including these direct action folks. So, dealing with local providers is always, it's problematic and it's probably never going to be as free or cheap. Also, direct action is limited in scope. Of course, like I focus in this chapter on Catholic worker houses of hospitality and farms because this is something that I'm fairly familiar with because I'm involved in it. And they try to do direct action by opening up homes to people and either allowing them to stay there permanently and contribute to the community, or having them in for meals or to sleep, depending upon the capacity of the house. Um, it's therefore limited in scope because A, there's not that many people willing to do something like open up their home to people who may not be housed otherwise or have people in their home to eat meals and so on. And also the problem is just the flip side of that is the problem is just too large to be dealt with by even if you doubled or tripled the amount of people willing to do this kind of thing. So direct action at this point cannot be the total solution. But it still can be, it could be part of the solution. If it's done well, it can save everybody money. The more that the community cooperates with each other, conceivably the less money gets spent, which, as I point out somewhere in here, isn't great for the economy. Like people depending on each other and working together and not buying things or using those kinds of goods aren't really contributing to the economy too much or not as much, which is good for people's bottom line all around, but not great for the economy. So I lean towards direct action, but I understand the necessity also of liberal charity. But I lean towards direct action because I think that it is something that will teach people of all kinds, if they do it, that very few people are truly other, or somebody to kind of like just reject or condemn. The more that you actually just interact with people from all walks of life, even homeless people, the more you realize that they are just very much like you and just have been stuck in a very bad situation or gotten themselves into a hole of some kind. So, there's so many ways in which this type of action can touch and change people on both sides, and there still are sides, right? There's still the givers and the receivers, but there's more humanizing, and the receivers are often in these situations asked to contribute and to do what they can to help with whatever it is that's going on. And since their help doesn't need to involve money, like if they're cleaning up the kitchen or they're cleaning up the shelter or laying out the blankets or whatever, they're contributing to the project without money, and it's useful and helpful. And that allows people to see each other as, oh, you are very much like me. So I think it erodes, but it doesn't eliminate class divisions amongst people involved, but it definitely has an eroding effect. If you do that kind of work, you're not going to be able to sit there and say, I just don't get why they don't just get a job. You're going to know. You're going to know. And you're going to probably have empathy for them. And you're going to see beyond that class division a little bit better. So it humanizes people and it reduces the fear of others, over time. It benefits everybody, but it is considered odd or beyond most people's comfort level. And so if you're involved in this kind of work, some people aren't going to be comfortable with you. They're going to think that you're taking too many risks or you're doing something that no sane person would want to do. And they will tell you that and make you feel almost foolish for doing something like being a Catholic worker. And sometimes that can get to be a little bit, much. It's another burden that gets sort of added on to people who are trying to do that kind of work. It's not supported by our general society. It's not supported by the economy, so it can lead to alienation and burnout. And its efficacy is hindered by mental illness and substance abuse because the more people that you are working with who have those problems severely, the less they can feel like they are contributing, and the harder it is to kind of like break through and have like an actual meaningful relationship with them. If a person is sort of coming at you, with words, but they're not making any sense because you know, they have they're either a severe alcoholic or a drug addict or their mental illness is too severe. All you can do is really just be with them, but you can't totally you can't maybe make that contact that you want to make. It also, honestly, does not solve causes of poverty, mental illness, and addictions, although I would argue that it comes closer to doing so for some people, because if people do feel respected and loved and valued and seen, then some of them can pull themselves out with the help that they get from others. And so, and it can be huge for certain people just to feel like they are a human being. And and sometimes they can grab hold of that and the help that's being offered to them and really feel like it's done in friendship, and they will change their circumstances. But it's a case by case story.